Welcome to the 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade podcast, a retrospective.
Hey folks, Brennan here. Thanks for tuning in to our 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade podcast. If you want to reach out or follow us, we're on Facebook and YouTube as 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade, Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch as 25 Years of VTM, and on our website at 25yearsofvtm.com. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Of course, we always say welcome back, or do we? I forget. You do enough of these, it always sounds like we say welcome or something. And I, of course, am me. And DJ, you're you.
Hello.
Mike, still you? That's what was cool is you muted and all we got was right. That's you sing. So that worked. Dope. I like that. That's a great intro, actually. I think everyone should now communicate in only tones. Right? You know, who are you, Momo? I'm teasing. So what we're doing here is we're doing the next chapter of Beckett's Shahad Diary, where, of course, we're doing this grand experiment, as we'll call it. And, it started off with Karna's Rebellion. Then we did a split city. Then we did Shadows Coalesce, which was probably the weirdest one for me to storytell with, is there was a part there where even I was lost. Like you did the stuff and I didn't know where the players are going with it. And then, now we're to War Across Dixie. What did you guys think of this chapter in Beckett's Shahad Diary, period?
Because I like the book and I like the way it's made, it's hard for me to say that I don't like this chapter, but I couldn't get any traction. When I read it, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. It feels detached from the story I'm getting in the chapters that came before it, if that makes sense.
What about you, DJ? We'll come back to that, Mike.
I felt it was all right, I got to figure out the right words to play. Okay, if I was to describe it just on feeling alone, it felt like crumbling ground. Because you got to figure at one point or another, people have to make power plays somewhere. And here we see where the weakest part happens to be that Dixie area. Because it's like the Sabbat are going in one direction, the Camar are attempting to take it back, but it's really not for them. It's really more for Pieterszoon. And because it's so weak there by comparison to the other bastions that exist, like New York, DC, LA, and stuff like that, you could see where you get power wherever you could garner it. And if it happens to be this is the only fertile ground, well, then so be it.
The straight up truth about this is you're both correct. Right? You're not supposed to feel solid ground, Mike. I don't know by his description. Did DJ more or less say how you felt?
Yeah, different words, but we're on the same page for sure.
Okay. It has to be their intention because let me throw the challenge at you. It's been real obligatory as to what's been going on to the southern states from the vampire perspective for a hot minute. Right, all the books, all the material don't really highlight on it. However, Wraith the Oblivion goes into it. Right, they have an Necropolis Atlanta, I think it might be called. We'll eventually one year get to that, and kind of goes over that. And there's a lot more that it opens up to, but it's like a crossover book. It's got some vampire stuff, there's some ghost stuff, but it's because it's a beautiful backdrop for Wraith because it's about people who refuse to give up the land. Right, if you ask any Southerner, we didn't lose. We're biding our time, right? The South will rise again. And that's the thing said, right? You Northerners, I'm not doing the actions to throw it out there. When I lived down South, I earned my keep for, a good solid decade and whatnot. And the accents, you learn it, you adapt it. It's a simpler way of speaking. And that's just the dialect. But the point is that Southern mentality is pride, strong pride. And that is their land. And you didn't take it from them, which was your intent when it was North versus South. So they won their right to exist as free Americans where they're at and all that stuff. But at the same time, the North did a bang up job screwing them over. We like to not look at this. Right. But if you look at the big cities, the big states, I'll say it, New York, Chicago, and once upon a time might have been Detroit. These are cities of industry. This is where all the money was going to. And however, this is some of the most villainous diabolical people came up in there, because that's economy. That's what they did. That's the capitalist structure that was taken advantage of when nobody was looking and who had their hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. But that doesn't mean the South prospered from it. Think about it. You had all this land, and you had once upon a time slaves to work it. And then when that went away, it wounded your operations. You were told slavery was great. Here you got them. They're working the land, multiple hundreds of acres your family had, and it was growing all these cash crops. Just keep that in your head. And there's a vampire lord that's there. Brought it right back to vampire. That's what the World of Darkness said. There's a vampire lord there governing it all, influencing these landowners, and land is good. Life is good. Then some folks in the city realized we can't just have slaughterhouses all day, which is what happened in Chicago. There's got to be other ways to get money and things to do. And you hear, well, those folks down south have a lot of wealth. They got huge plantations of wealth. They got all sorts of things. And that whole feel where, I think it was, who was the plantation owner that Quentin Tarantino had there? Something Candy. Do you remember that?
Calvin
Mr.
Candy?
Yeah, Mr. Candy, the depiction of the aristocratic royalty, that's not a made up thrown in thing. That's a lifestyle those folks had. They were the royalty of the South. Well, what they did here for the books is that basically the war across Dixie, even before that, when it was like Atlanta and the main states, is that you had lords of the South. They were royalty, and they're vampires. They're not giving that up for nothing. But at the same time, they had deep roots that were ingrained in them with how they're raised, that they are descendants, generational descendants of folks who had land before them, what they did with it, and all that stuff. So what this means is, if you're in a book like Wraith the Oblivion, the people that die stick around. Your grandpappy died, and he told you he'd watch over the land as long as the family held it, and he wasn't kidding. And he's still there. And so it's no secret no shocker that they would have certain vampires that would be able to communicate with them that weren't Giovanni or born as a Nagaraja or had some ingrained, inborn power for necromancy. Instead, these are vampires who figured out necromancy, right? Mm-hmm. You wonder about those merits like medium and things are haunted and things like that. And you begin to understand that this is what's going on when the realms of the world of the spirit and the real thin, right? And it's emotions that govern that. They've always been about that. Now, why I say that is if you think about it, this place was already in turmoil because vampires don't control mortals. They influence them. But when the mortals decided it was brother against brother, which is the horror of the Civil War, that's the real problem. When people say it was about race, it wasn't just about race. There's no way it could have been just about race. This came down to economics. You have more than us, and we potentially are losing way more than you. And you have, we don't, we need, how do we get it? But you want to agree to our policies, we want to agree to yours, well, then I guess it's war. And to a nation founded on war, founded by founding fathers and whoever else who did the exact same thing to the monarchy, we were going to do it to ourselves. And it was blood and boots to figure it out. And we know how that went. That's history. Well, to the World of Darkness, that happened too. They were there, these vampire lords and otherwise. And so that's what this chapter's updating. It's saying nothing works in a vacuum, which is exactly what you said, DJ. Someone needs to make some moves. Needs to power moves. Things need to happen. Stuff needs to occur. But this has to go after we had the novels where the Sabbat just stormed the whole southern areas, right? They came through kicking ass and taking names and taking cities whole, swallowing them up. But we know the Sabbat. They took them over. Doesn't mean they govern well. The great stormtroopers, but you ask who's in charge, and well, the knives come out. That's what happens. So this is no different. But the simple fact is that the Sabbat ran afoul of one thing, the same thing that Camarilla ran afoul of. You wonder what happened to Marcus Vittel. Now, we played that chapter, Shadows Coalesce, of the aftermath of where he is. No one ever talks about how he was found out. Let me tell you, it wasn't a Ventrue meeting. Right? Let me tell you that 100%. It's a Methuselah Lasombra pretending to be a Ventrue because he's mocking the Camarilla, taking the seat of power in all of America. He knew where the power was and had it and wasn't letting it go for nobody. There's one Tremere who was trying to dance with him, and he didn't kill him because it amused him to have a political opponent. Right? You like to play chess in a park against your rivals. That's literally what Sejanus is, or excuse me, Marcus Vittel the Ventrue. So at these Ventrue meetings, everybody's coming in, and it's a clan known for dominate. Didn't you find it interesting that he sat out in the open and not a single Ventrue went, hang on a second, I don't remember you in my lineage. Wasn't Marcus different? Didn't you say Marcus was a brunette? Right? Things like that. You know why they didn't say it? Because the Ventrue clan's smart. They know what a poker face is. And when you were in the room with Marcus Vitelli, you knew one thing. You wouldn't dare challenge him. You wouldn't dare do it. You let that be. Jesus. Right? Try Jesus. Don't try me, because I'll throw hands. Right? Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And we know that's Sejanus. So what happens? Sabat's success meets a snafu, as it's called. Because when they get to DC to storm it and take it over, it's like, what? What do you mean there's a Lasombra there? That's what happened. And a sect that the Lasombra are royalty, they go there to storm it, and that Lasombra came off the throne, and was like, you taking what's mine? You insolent children. Time to whoop ass. And the Cam was like, wait a second. You all knew too? Oh, shit, it's the Sabat. They're warfare out in the open, and now we got to see who's going to get what. And it's, in other words, chaos. Yeah. Chaos is what happened. And so that throws it all into the clink, as it said. And simple fact is that we got to tell that story. There's got to be that aftermath of who did what and where. We know DC warranted its own chapter. But we roll in here, here's the rest of the South, where you could basically be anywhere, right? They tap into New Orleans. What is there? There's Dixieland. There's Atlanta. Yeah.
And see, again, I don't want to sound like a complainer because this book is so fun. But the scope, bro. The scope. You know how much America is in between New Orleans and Atlanta?
Oh, yes, I do.
That is a lot. That's a lot of space.
But it tells you, let's see, what the areas to focus on real quick, though. It's Atlanta, Baltimore, you have Birmingham, you have Richmond,
St.
New
Louis.
Orleans. And no, the ones they focus on here, it's 5. It's 5 on this. I think that's all 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the focus. That's where
I was thinking of the War Council. Yeah, I might have been confused.
Well, that's okay. I don't say confusion, but what I was trying to do is I got in there with you to stay with you, is to say, yeah, you can encapsulate all that territory, or you can focus on what they focus on. Right? So they help you do the cheat already. They guide you towards what's relevant, at least from their perspective. And that's where it's at. And remember, Begshad, the diary is designed that no matter what your campaign is, if you set it here, this is the seeds and the filler for some pretty important jump off points, or things to include to broaden your canon plot, or to meld it with canon and then kind of enjoy that. Everybody enjoys that. And so that's what you get to do. The fun part is that the rest of it's up to you. So you get to determine that. And that's what that's about. But that's more or less the overview. Right. We know the Sabat took some stuff, a lot of stuff, and then they ran into a foul thing in DC. New Orleans had that upstart prince, and New Orleans was weird, period. Can we just say that?
Yeah.
Right. I know we reviewed the New Orleans book, but I want to state again, I was so disappointed. And here's the disappointment that comes from it. It's real simple. Whenever I think of you putting in a book that mages are a faction and vampires are next door neighbors, right? Like the Tremere went down to the last magic meeting, and it's been decided that they're now going to charge for every reality spell that's thrown in their domain, because the hijinks of Paradox are going to become to realize. And granted, we're vampires when we get touched by Paradox, but the mages are once again going to ding the economy. So we got to make sure we balance it by upping their cost of living, so it's better for everybody. What did you just say? I think you just said taxes are going up this year for everybody because of them. Like, in other words, if that confused you and you're like, Bob, what the hell are you talking about? That's how I felt to go, what do you mean the Order of Hermes is in the backyard and they hate the Tremere? Or sure, they should hate the Tremere. They were part of whatever. The Akashic Brotherhood, once again, invite everybody out to the park for meditation and cookies. Right? Don't worry. Magic makes it to where vampires can enjoy these cookies. Come one, come all. Bite a friend. Like that's the jokes that enter my head where I'm like, this is so stupid. And why I say it's stupid, there are people out there. I love it when mage mixes with vampires. I get to put those leeches in place. Yeah, except for the fact when I tell you those leeches can just shoot you.
No spells required.
Right? Not at all. You don't even know they're there. They blend in with mortals unless you use your special magic site, which I'll remind you, mages, if you're using the rules, If you walk around all day throwing magical spells, paradox becomes your buddy, which basically works like radiation. Just put that in your head. I can cast this spell and alter reality, but I'll be shitting my liver in a week. Is it worth it, or should I just get a job to afford this house? Right? That's these are the things mages have to deal with. So to me, each faction has their own thing to focus on, warranting its own book. It should have been like, there's the New Orleans book from the mages half, and then here's the vampire New Orleans over here. And if they're not that big of a deal to encapsulate the city, then don't make the book so all spanning. But when they put them all together, you're like, right? And then they're going to throw up, hey, don't forget Marie Laveau. Yeah, I'm going to forget Marie Laveau. It's not special enough that there are vampires and mages in town. Oh, don't forget the Black Sprout dancers in the swamp. Right? Like, whoa. Who the hell is playing Vampire the Slaughter? Like, you just struggle. Who's doing this? You know? Don't forget the Sabat pack trying to make it work. Well, I'm going to forget it first, Ed. Oh, I'm going to forget it, right? Over here in 2023, this is comical. But there's a reason it's comical. Because back in the day, random stuff was required to throw in books to generate interest. We didn't know. As fans, we didn't know what was offered. And as the owners, they didn't know what to throw to you. They're artists creating stuff hoping it sticks, and they can't invest in all those books like I'm saying. I'm speaking from a hindsight, which is always good. And also from high hopes. Like you would think someone had that thought. Maybe they didn't. I don't care. I wasn't invited to the table, and that's y'all's fault, industry. So the simple truth is, here we are. So in this book, you got to take that with a big old grain of salt. Bag of salt sitting with you and all the stuff you see, because bang up job was done by the authors who did this, right? They dug deep and got in there. We know Dawkins was definitely a force behind this too, just to throw just a name drop. And that's a good guy to have you go through your stuff and kind of try to make things make sense. I know this because, like myself, he's like the super polite version of Bob that will always think to say the right things, so he maintains a job. I'm me. I'm the Bob you wanted, right? That's what I'm going to tell you. I'm the conscience you asked for, and here I am. And so what I'm going to say to you is that I don't filter it. And why I don't filter it is because I don't like feeling silly because you guys do. You'll come directly to our team here and be like, you said this, but we know you meant that. No, I'd rather you just hear what I said, right? And call it a day, deal with the fallout. And here's what I'm going to tell you. This book is literally the Band-Aid to all that material, to all that madness of what was going on. And it gives you a good intro chapter as to why it's going on too. They use Jan Petersohn because, let's face it, during Gehenna, Jan Petersohn was the focal. He's the manager, the general manager going down, closing shop for Blockbuster Video. Right? That's the analogy I give you.
That's pretty good.
It's not wrong. It's not wrong at all. Jan Peterson's walking through the door. We've been doing videos here for a long time. We know Suncoast gave it to our competitor across the way. Don't worry. The city can still go over to Suncoast to get their vampires. It's all right. They could, check them out there and all the latest and greatest. But, it's been a good run. But we're going online now for a little bit. Thank you, Netflix. And that's what, that sad goodbye that they tell the company. And it's like, here's your severance pay goodbye, to close the doors and board it all up and they're done. That's what the company was doing when it came around to that whole Gehenna thing. Big exit for the big brand, except none of the fans wanted it. So here we are, and we all talked about it. The Great Retcon. Nothing is more obvious of the Great Retcon than really this chapter. You're staring it right in the face. There's only so many ways you can spin it. And I think they did a heroic, an incredible Hulk job of just sitting here going, I know a lot of crazy happened. Let's just push that to the side. Here's that crazy broken up in parts that you might be able to use for an ongoing game that could be cool. And then Mike goes, I feel like there's too much shit going on. That's correct, Mike. But don't look behind the curtain. Please enjoy the free sandwiches we brought tonight for the game. I don't know how to make my character. How am I going to be warring in Birmingham and get this game in New Orleans? Yeah, don't worry about that, Mike. It's a private jet, whatever we're going to say. It's like we're doing it in parts then. You told me there's no mages here. Yeah, that's a magic shop. And they have a talisman that burns people and stops people from roasting during the day. Yeah, Mike, that's a relic project. I mean, trust me if I told you the truth. If you knew. And Mike's like, I found online this New Orleans book by night. Oh no, it's out. That's definitely going to read, and that's what it's
Leave
like.
it
And then
alone.
you ruin it for yourself. Humor aside, that's kind of this chapter trying to fix. And like I said, it's done well. So instead of focusing on the minutia of the chapter written in the narrative faction, like we said, we jump right to the end where we're trying to get this going on. So we're going to do something fun. What I'm going to have you guys do is we're going to read about each section in a nice, decent way, right? But I should bring this up. Talks about the war. Says Sabak came in. Everybody's super war happened. And this is the section that says old times, they're not forgotten. But what it's talking about is everything gets shooken up. And why it gets shaken up is the Sabak Crusade coming through, kicking ass, taking names. Camarilla's trying to hold on. Surprise! We already talked about that. Vitel's in D.C. What are we? Sejanus in D.C. That doesn't fall. What do we do? And, well, tell you what they do. They focus on the fact that the ringleader of this counter-revolutionary movement is Jan Pedersen. And we know he's the child of the esteemed Ventru Hardestead, the founder, as he's being called, of the Camarilla. And we all know the misgivings there. There was definitely a whole group that was with Hardestead, but not anymore. Not as they focus on it. And the point is, there's an obsessive interest Hardestead has in keeping quiet about the facts of Methuselah's and ancients and talks of Gehenna. Once it put to bed, bury it. And that's really what he's sending Jan around to do. But why? And the answer is you don't really know. Jan doesn't even know.
Right.
But he knows he's...
Memory.
Yeah, but he knows he's...
Go ahead.
But what I'm saying is what Jan is there to do, as far as the princes here are concerned, or the few dignitaries of the Camarilla that are around surviving, is they believe, well, we're here for the war. And Jan's coming around to help us. And so there's some horse trading going on. The Ventru are making deals and paying boons that are being cashed in to help people take back territory. For instance, the Malkavian Primogen, who they focus on, Silverson, who is trying to become prince. Or where he is prince. He's Prince of Birmingham, I believe, and he wants to get it back. And to get it back, he has to work through, I believe it was New Orleans was the staging ground, to look at these territories and how to push back in to get it done. And Jan's here to help that happen. But really, Jan's also really here to bury talks of Gehenna and that nonsense. This is hard to do when the Sabbat's whole reason for launching the crusade is to get the Camarilla, who are doing what?
Covering up the goods.
Serving the antediluvians.
Oh, well, yeah.
Right? That's what the Sabbat says. They serve the antediluvians. That's why they're the sword of Cain. You wronged them once, not again. And, that's them. Crazy, crazy stuff. But if that's what they're doing, and that's sort of the backdrop of what's going on, and that's what's presented, then we have here snippets of what's going on. And we're going to start with Atlanta. And DJ, if you could tell us what's going on with Atlanta.
Well, after the Washington, D.C. and Montreal, the most important Sabbat-held city in North America, actually, it's because of Archbishop Antonio Delgado, who is a protege and supporter of Cardinal Francisco de Polonia, which is actually really interesting to read about, considering all facts. It's Polonia that we're talking about, but it puts him at odds with other bishops who support differently, and there's about 100 Sabbat that are still in Anansa, but it's more than the city could actually physically hold, which we come into those mystical numbers again, right? Whether or not they could do it, but hey, it's Sabbat, so I guess we could talk about it that way. And they're seeing whether or not Amana could actually hold its own regarding Sabbat. Will it pop like a balloon?
So what we have here is that it's dropping big hints that Washington, D.C., whether you want to say it's Sabbat held or not, they're present and all around it, right? Soon to be, if you will. We know Montreal is, and there's stuff that happens and goes down. We're just going to leave it at that. But they're talking about a civil war. So why is Archbishop Delgado, granted he's a protege of Cardinal Francisco de Polonia, what's the big deal? What's going on? And that's sort of the backdrop. But if it's a civil war and they're talking about supporters, remember the big thing. At this point, we know Melinda Galbraith is dead. Right? That's the region of the Sabbat, the ruler of the Sabbat, if you will. Sabbat can talk all they want to. They're free. In reality, they have a regent. There's only one vamp that sits at the top, at the head fang of them all. And that's theirs. And because of that, and that's gone, they got to find a new one and find a new one quick. And that's why they're talking civil war. You have warlike pacts that are still vampires. At the end of the day, don't you find it interesting that for all the Sabbat talk about them being individuals and yes, our pack and choose and everything else, they still have a structure. They still have a military hierarchy. Granted, they have an ecclesiarchy, but the ecclesiarchy position and roles do what? help them maintain their Sabbat paths of enlightenment, their goodbyes to being human, and their ways to survive as being with these new vampire philosophies or roads of enlightenment, if you will. That's a system. That's a system. Think what the military does. They take you as you are. They break you down in boot camp. They build you back up with this new discipline doctrine of obey. It's do your duty and obey. We have you for 4 years and you're set for life, but you will serve, and we own you. Whether we give you 1 hour sleep or 18 hours of sleep is subject to what we have you do. You don't get to say no. Overtime is not a thing you bitch about. There will be no union. You're a soldier. To be a soldier is to soldier. That's it. Do you think the Sabbat's any different, fellas?
No.
Nope.
No, and there's really not only is there no OT, there's really no time off, right? You're supposed to treat day raids like a pizza party.
It's a thing. I think it's pivotal to know that about the Sabbat, that the lowest of the low to the highest of the high, doesn't matter if you're a vet or not. You learned a long time ago. You absolutely answer to someone. Success is rewarded and failure is punished. There is no difference. That's anywhere you go. A lot of people ascribe that to the Camarilla. The Ivory Tower does it to you. Anarchs don't have to suffer it. Anarchs do too. Whether Anarchs are being bullied by the Camarilla or the Sabbat, that's freedom, folks. You're free to not have protection, to be poorly banded together, and to be steamrolled by the people who have their shit together. That's how that works. I'm not saying Anarchs suck, but I'm saying there's a reason the Anarchs are the unpredictable, chaotic element of the three sects, right? Mm-hmm. Now, in this point, they're about to suffer a civil war. So that's Atlanta. Mike, do me a favor. If that's what's going on in Atlanta, what's going on in Baltimore?
So Baltimore is kind of like Vitel's front porch right now. Well, let me start from the chapter. Still Sabbat, but with a growing Anarch presence drawn to Baltimore by rumors of the ancient Prince Vitel returning from the dead as an Anarch sympathizer. In actuality, he's not really Anarch so much as neither Camarilla nor Sabbat. Just do what Vitel says. In practice, it's unlikely Anarchs will accept Vitel the tyrant any more than any other autocratic leader, but if he surrounds himself with enough of the trappings of democracy, he might draw the Anarchs of Baltimore to his banner. A plurality of Anarchs who've been caught between the Sabbat and the Camarilla for years would be fine with Vitel so long as he can keep the city free of the jihad.
Well, let's focus on that one thing. I want to stick out in your head because that's the most profound thing about this, right? A plurality of Anarchs who've been caught between the Sabbat and Camarilla for years would be fine with Vitel so long as he can keep the city free of the jihad. So understand what that is. They're a group of cowards. I'm just going to call it what it is. There's a group of cowards who can't pick a side, and the two sects have been trying to force them to one because they're caught in the middle, right? Now, you may think it's a harsh thing to say that Bob, you're calling them a coward, and it's unfair. They just don't believe in serving one side or the other, and they're being punished for it. Folks, I hate to break it to you. It's pick a side or get tossed to one when it comes to territory. Whether you're human or not. Like, if you think like a government, we don't mess around. Why don't you ask Hawaii? Right? It's a done deal. If we want your land, it's ours. Welcome to America. That's how it works. And nobody bats an eye. You know, we're the unstoppable juggernaut for that. And you might call America Camarilla. However, let's flip it around and call Mexico Sabbat. Right, because I think it's fitting, both in and out of game, because that's kind of how, you know, and it's their territory and that's where it is. Well, all Mexico has known since almost its inception is war. War and revolution as they try to figure out how to make things work and defending their resources and everything else, historically and otherwise. And America has done damage to them coming down to get it done, but they haven't owned Mexico whole, and they certainly haven't destroyed their pride. In fact, they've evolved. Right, we won't get into cartels, but let's just say they're not there with no teeth, and I'm going to leave it at that. And because of that, you need to look at the World of Darkness follows suit, and it's beautifully so. So when you look at this thing where you have this group of Anarchs hanging out, and what the hell is going on? Well, if a big, strong Vitel wants to come in and he wants to protect us from the Cam and the Sabbat, then I guess we're free from the jihad. And if we could live our own life right here in our polite neck of the woods and he'll protect us at the door, we'll obey him. And I say, you don't have a fucking choice. It's a done deal. What they're writing in this chapter is you can go ahead, I guess, and have players be here with these Anarchs trying to decide if it tells aces or not. But I'm telling you, in my view, what they said right there, lock, stock, Those cowards are screwed. They don't got a choice. You should have gone Cam or you should have gone Sabat. And if you weren't going to go either, then it's Vettel's shirt you need to buy and start wearing and walking around with. I voted for the darkness in 1999. You know, you need to do something because that's it. You don't get to sit there anymore and hide. So, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're going to give the Anarchs the benefit of the doubt, it's nice to have a Methuselah on your flank. Right? If we assume that they're legit and they're going to fight for the ground that they've been living on, right? If Vettel came to the door, I'll treat him the same way. He doesn't want the smoke. Okay, sure. But if you were going to have to fight the devil you know, which I suppose is the Cam, or the devil you don't, which I suppose is the Sabat, it's nice to have some help that you know is also trying to fight those guys, right? So I think you could play a game in this Baltimore, but I wouldn't want to play that game unless I already knew what I had agreed to from Prince Darkness, right? Like, we have agreed to beat the borders for Vettel in exchange for exclusion from the Jihad. Like, if I know the terms of the deal, we could play that game. That could last. But if I just haven't met this man and there's some great evil lurking, I don't know about that.
You thought, CJ?
That's not a game I want to play. Like, it's already on the table. The writing's on the wall. Like, it really is on the wall, right? And as you were mentioning before, and I guess when you know what the cards are on the table, especially looking at it from the point of an Anarch being in Baltimore going like, okay, well, maybe this is all cool, freedom. It's a joke. It really is. It's just, you just don't see the writing on the wall, right? It's like all this movement is happening in the background, and it's like, oh, free from the Jihad. You're literally playing in the Jihad because you couldn't pick a side. You've just become cannon fodder, but you just don't recognize it yet. And it's like you're going to run away in the first place. But how aren't you noticing that? And especially in like, all right, Anarchs, rah, 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 we get to do whatever we want. But you're literally at his doorstep. And if he doesn't tolerate it in D.C., what makes you think he's going to tolerate it in Baltimore? Like, you're but a kick step away, and he could just easily turn around and go like, what did I say about the masquerade? And that's all he really cared about in the first place, right? All it takes is like, and then you'll start going missing like people in Argentina in the 60s. It's just, it happens. What do you think about it?
That was a deep throwback and scary one at that. So that's, no, I agree with that take, right? But let's talk about fun. Can it be fun? Absolutely. Like to say that you're going to play Anarch in this area and see what the ST does in interpretation of Vettel's approach. Do you even know Vettel's there? The Sabat's there, but how do they do you in? Are you a spy for the Sabat? Are you the Cam trying to force and get something going? I call those the hopeless situations that are good, where it's underdog situations, and everybody, it's America. We root for the underdog. And go ahead, Mike.
Well, no, I just want to add, it sounds more like a seed to me, like the stinger to like, this is the context for what you guys can do. Since you said you want to play Anarchs in Baltimore, here's what's going on. Because I also have to assume, right, there's a whole bunch of bullshit behind the curtain that we're going to discover as we attempt to play this role we've chosen for ourselves.
Well, I won't say that it's that. Of course, it's a seed. That's the point of this, right? They're creating jump off points for you to create the intricate stories that could happen from this. That's the point. But what they're giving you is the logic of what happened in this area. This is what they face now. So you're inspired. What's going on? The brainstorming here. What do you think happened? What's going on here? That's literally what it's designed to do. Develop a dialogue to get you wondering, to get you your creative juices flowing, to create more story, to create characters to be here to tell the stories of the indomitable Vettel or the tyrant who just wants you to vote for him. Right? To me, it feels a lot like if God came down here and said, Jesus didn't work, but I'm Tyrone. I understand how you like to have a little minority now being here, but I got to tell you, they're becoming back as the majority because Tyrone is both the president, voted in Africa just now, because I'm God. I just made that happen. We're going to skip that. The focus is here in the States. Knowing Africa backs me 100%, I'm here to be the president for you. And he's pale-skinned as hell. And he goes, everybody show up to your voter box. Of course, you'll be paid for it. Show up with your voter card. That's how I feel it, because that's the absolute power of Vattel by comparison to any character that's going to be playing that area. But strangely, why does he need you to vote for him? Well, because he was started off as a mortal man before he got godlike power and centuries of backing. I'm just pointing out. There's humor there. There's a lot of play with that you can do. Because does that not speak to the ennui and the problems that an ancient would have with the modern times? Why does he need you to want to vote for him?
Yeah, I mean, because he wants to do more than survive, and for that he needs at least a buffer zone.
Remember, Sejanus served in Rome, and he was almost emperor. Almost. Yeah. That wasn't his goal, but he was executed by the emperor for being more popular, more beloved, and almost for having the real emperor overthrown, and he didn't even try to do that. His supporters did, and the emperor kiboshed him. They did him in and threw him down the steps. Called it a day, right? So, or in the world of darkness, he got embraced at the bottom of them steps, right? That's how that happened in the La Sombra when he's drug him off. And that's that. All right, cool. Well, here we are centuries later where he's like, being emperor of America is pretty cool. Even if done from the shadows, right? It's pretty badass. But I digress. That's them. So we flow down to Birmingham, DJ. And I'm going to say this, Birmingham folks, take a shot glass, take a hit of whatever you're drinking right now if you want to, as DJ kind of goes through this.
The Birmingham right now is nominally Camarilla, but it's been flip-flopped back and forth so many times. It's actually the focus in this particular chapter because of Silverson and him trying to get it back. What makes it interesting, though, is that this is probably our first taste of a schismatic Assamite and how they're starting to enter the picture. The character's name is Randy Hopkirk, and he actually happens to be the sheriff. And he has an interesting story about how he happens to be a devout Christian, and his place and his time in the mountain didn't work out that way. Surrounded by folks who didn't like his Christian ways and devoutness, he came back, and he found his way back into Birmingham, which also means that it's a staging ground for other Assamites to be there. People aren't sure whether or not they're going to accept them, but Birmingham's the play. And the crazy part about it was that it was really contested by Lupines for some time. The Camarilla kind of lost it over. The Sabbat came, took care of the Lupines for the most part, and then Silverson goes like, all right, well, now that's done. I'm back. But he can't keep it together. He needs more help.
What I'm going to help you with is to understand that what you're calling is that the Lupines are, not as bad anymore. I don't call accepting the BSDs as a better alternative. I mean, as they say here, nominally the Camarilla are here, but with a dangerously large Lupine presence, Birmingham is only just thrown off the yoke of the Sabbat. They just got rid of the Sabbat. 4 hours from Atlanta, however, and a war party could lay siege to Birmingham at any given time. So they're under a lot of stress. We could be taken over any time by the real enemy, and let's not forget the other real enemy that we didn't even put a dent in. That's still in our backyard. But don't worry, that there's local Sabbat packs who want to kill us. Local Sabbat packs in Birmingham that want to kill us, that hold alliances with feral, psychotic, and unreasoning lupines that are the Black Sprout dancers. But it's okay because Silverson's got strong support, right, DJ?
Supposedly. That's the propaganda. That's what Peterson says.
Yeah, well, no, the sheriff, right? Randy Hopkirk. Oh, Randy came back from Alamut, has an eye for how to hunt them lupines. He says, you silver folks, long-range silver, you too can have your own self a wolf throw rug. That's right. For every lupine you kill, and if they die, that is, if you're a smart one, you just wound them, and as they regenerate the fur, you keep cutting it off them. Fur stays around. It's its own business. Just keep them in the basement shackled in silver, feed them raw meat like they like them animals, and skin them daily. Just skin them daily. And all day long, you could be drying your very own wolf cloak family business online on Etsy. It's done and done.
1,000 Meter Randy's General Store.
That is the best. That is the best. Why do I clown on it so much? Because it's not that there can't be an Assamite who's Southern. Of course there can be. They don't care. Come one, come all. If you know how to kill, we know how to mold you into the weapon we need. That's always been that clan distinction. But the simple fact is that they hyper-focus on him coming in, and that makes a staging ground for other Assamites to be there. There's just one problem. Realistically, if the Sabbat are there and the Camarilla's there, The Assamites don't need your permission to be there. Right? Can we point that out? The clan of assassins that's been killing vampires since the jump. They've been killing you just found out that you could talk to them. Right? You just found out they're willing to have tea with you and discuss that thing called allegiances. And you owe that to the Banu Hakim. That's right. You owe that to Allah. Right? The Muslim Assamites are the ones who approach you and went, we can have a chat. Or are you the representative of your entire clan and they say nothing? They just stare at you. Oh, well, that's cool. At least you're talking. Yes, it turns out we're very knowledgeable. We enjoy conversations. Meanwhile, back at the Bob, right? Because Bruja X is Bob, and he's going, am I the only one forgetting that they want to kill us all? He said, well, ask him. Aren't you here to kill us all? Only the bad ones. That makes you feel good? Every freaking one of them's Batman?
Who decides?
Right? It's not even bad. Sorry, it's the Punisher. I'm Frank Castle. I'm going to do you in. Right? It's the same method. Come in and kill you, take your stuff. So I'm rearmed for the war where I come and kill you. Now he's coming with smiles. That's me. I've always felt the Camarilla and the Sabbat should be like, what do you guys do? Well, we kill all vampires, but just the bad ones. Yeah, okay. Kill these guys. What's that? This guy doesn't leave the room. Kill him and make it look like we hold him hostage, and hopefully we can keep having him walk through the door and play whack-a-mole with this entire assassin clan, because we sure can't find him. We have trouble tracking him. The Nosferatu raised his hands. We found him. Who are you? I'm the Nos that found them. That's an Assamite, says Bob. I'm going to tell you, when they wrote that a Nosferatu found where Alamut is, ran back and told the Camarilla, nah, Alamut let that guy go, and that's not a Nosferatu that ran back and told you. I'm just pointing it out.
It's a trap.
Right? It's stage 2. We can't keep operating from the shadows from this far away because even they realize jet fuel is expensive. Cost of living's going up. Alamut ain't made of money, and they got to figure this out, right? We kill for blood. That don't pay the bills. Turns out taxes are a bitch. So we got to get closer to the enemy, right? Jokes is jokes, but understand why I'm clowning on this sheriff. Right? Because they make it seem like, oh, well, he came back home. They make it sound like they sent him to Alamut. Right? As they do, he's like, oh, well, in a stroke of wisdom, Silverson said, one of our own's got to be brave enough to go off to the draft of Alamut and send him to the Middle Eastern mountains out there to become a hardened, born-again badass. So he can come back here and kill them lupine, Sabbat, and the Camarilla that don't accept my new rule. And then he comes back and goes, well, part of the deal is that, all praises unto Allah is part of it. And not only that you have to accept the idea of community and preserving the masquerade and seeing to the betterment of your people. Well, hell yeah, it's America. We'll see to the betterment of our people. Now get that gun and show me how to use it. And let's go kick some ass. What I just told you is that we got to accept some of them here. They're asking for a mosque, and that's what is that? It's a church. Yeah, we got plenty. Go ahead and throw it up. Knowing he didn't think about it, Silverson's going to say anything to save his territory is my point.
Yep.
And that's kind of the thing here. And so you get that idea. But I just want to point out, that's not even the crazy stuff. It's not even about the Assamite stuff. And I don't even think it's a problem culture-wise or nothing. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying that's the interesting part. How you're going to mix that together and make that stick. Should be fun. It's the lupines. We're in the middle of reviewing Werewolf the Apocalypse, and every freaking book says, and I quote, kill the leech. Kills them.
All of them.
No befriends them, kills them. We do. Right? If there's a reason to howl, it's because they have fangs. And that's, vampire. Right? They're bad. Somehow, you've been country bumpkining up out here with these lupines aplenty. Like, you make it sound like there's an army out here, and they've been dancing and just totally cool with you being here. Now, I get the Sabbat. Since I think the Sabbat have been bosom buddies with the Black Spirals. That's just how they wrote them in First Ed. Like, hey, are you the bad vamps? Yeah, well, we're the bad werewolves, so we should join a club. Yeah, you got it. Hey, how about we work under an evil conglomerate that has super money that everybody hates, just so we don't have to work at McDonald's? Yeah, all right.
Bentex Dakota rings.
Right, exactly. And that's what it seemed like. It's the super evil Hydra organization. And in reality, when they fleshed it out more, the Black Spiral dancers are more psychotic than Sabbat ever were. And like 9 times as dangerous and incredibly, they're like chaos incarnate. The worm did well. And when you compare that to the Sabbat, it's like, well, if the Sabbat is just a bad day, if the Sabbat is the non-humane aspect of what the Camarilla is, and they're both orgs, yeah, I don't see how they stand up to them. And I'd be more worried about them in their backyard than anything else. But then you have these super stand upright werewolves who said all must go. That's a very dangerous aspect in a city. And so I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying this is the place to be for all that action, right? And that's where that goes down. Last but not least, the last two, really, I'll do it just to be accurate. We got Richmond. Says Richmond is still firmly a Sabbat city, but it's not going to be that way for long because the Sabbat leadership more or less abandoned Richmond in the wake of the Sabbat Civil War. Right? We already mentioned what that is. But basically, what you have now is that the younger Sabbat are kind of kicking rocks in this area, trying to maintain rule of the Sabbat itself. Now, the Ancilla who are there have no idea they've been marked for death by ghouls employed by the Ventru Mariana Thatchet, who we'll just say they want to root out the havens of them during the day. Of course, Mariana herself has no idea that these free ghouls are actually members of the Enrathi Revenant family. Hello, true Sabbat throwback. They'll use her lust to take Richmond in order to wring concessions from her that will benefit their own twisted needs. How do I put this? They put this there. We'll just use their words. Inbreed, perverted, and blessed with potent mental powers, the Enrathi primarily want to use the Camarilla to finance their modern-day slavery operations. That's the tough part of talking about this. But many of them still serve the mysterious Tal Merah and that whole agenda. I almost throw Richmond out of my head. I just throw it out of my head. I don't know. This hit me. Maybe it didn't you, Mike. I'm asking for personal reasons, and I can be a little too sensitive. But when I see this, where it's like you got somebody here marking people for death because they got ghouls employed, free ghouls, they put in quotations, right? Slavery sucks. Yep. And, you're down south, it's Richmond. Here we got slavery, but hey, it's not color of skin, and I don't really care that it is because you're using the bullshit true hand nonsense that was created that nobody likes. Let me take that back. Not nobody. You can't blanket statement. There are certain people who enjoy that book for what it is, and I'm glad you exist. But I hope even you come with me on this, that maybe this is a little tasteless. And, to each their own, I just don't prefer it, is what I'm saying. Because to me, who gives a shit about the Enrathi? That's what I'm saying. You're throwing them in here. They're running around, still kidnapping people, still sending slavery operations, modern day, blah, blah, blah. Answer me that question, right? We know that this is a thing that they're saying is going on, but like in Richmond, these people are disappearing and ending up in some super system going other places and nobody notices.
I mean, so the Richmond section gave me kind of a snowflake is a harsh word. I don't mean it harshly, but it seems like the game for people who don't want to be in the game, right? Like if they don't want to be Cam because they don't like what the Cam's doing, and they don't want to be Sabbat because it seems like it's just more Sabbat terror, and they don't want to be Anarch because Anarchs are cowards. So what else can we do to participate in the blah, 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 blah? And they say, okay, well, there's a Revenant family that's going to hoodwink a Ventru princess after kidnapping Sabbat. So do that and know your attrition rate's going to be high.
It's a freaking Wario?
I mean...
So, let's play Bowser, the vampire version? All right. I'm with you. I just didn't... Wow, that's harsh, Mike. That's pretty good.
So I would never think to play this. If an ST pitched it to me, I would say I would rather just work for Jessup.
Yeah, but they had to pitch it to you like this. Hey, guys, I know it's I know it's Gen Con, and we're at the hotel in the lobby of where DJ's staying, and there's 11 of us, and we all ordered that terrible pizza that we love at 2 a.m., and here we are. I got an idea for a game. What do you think? This is what they get pitched. Am I wrong, DJ?
That's horrible, but true.
I mean, that's exactly what this is. This is a Gen Con story that's thrown at you. It could happen. The Enrathi, they snatch children and steal them to the true hand to be trained by. And I'm like, that's the whole thing. They kidnap them to steal them to their sect to serve the Tal Merah. But to me, it's like whoever saw this went, I don't know, let's just say the Enrathi are still in operation, and if you want to use them, here you are.
Yeah. I mean, it just felt like they needed to ass pull somebody obscure that could just believably bushwhack some Sabbat packs and at the same time have a hope of double-crossing a Venture Princess. I'm fine with it. I would only play it for as long as it took me to finish my large pizza. But I don't hate it. Right?
It's not that I have a hatred. I said it's awkward. The feels from it are a little, right? Especially
because I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they said Mariana's black.
Yeah. Well, I thought so too. That was my recollection, but I can't confirm it. I don't have the energy. Let me be honest. I'm being lazy about it. I don't even want to go look at it because we're talking about what game we're going to get into. And we're just explaining to everybody beginning, right? We're already over the half-hour mark we have for this. Right. But I don't care. I'm having fun. So when we get to the New Orleans, though, let's round this out. It's just okay. So we may not be a fan of the area, but I'll laugh my ass off if that gets selected, by the way. Because you guys have already done it to me. The scenario I didn't want to do, you forced on me, and I've had to do it. So it's possible, folks. So now we're at New Orleans. Mike, what's happening in New Orleans?
You want me to tell you what it sounds like or what the book says is happening?
I want you to do both. That's why I said Mike.
Okay.
DJ going to give me that corporate response and sit there with the thought in his eyes, smiling in his eyes. No, I want DJ to comment on this. Go for it, Mike.
The book says New Orleans is ostensibly Camarilla, but the Prince of New Orleans is a disgraced, largely self-taught Tremere marked for death by his own clan. His rule is nominal, and increasingly, true power devolves to an alliance of voodooists. I have never heard that word from disparate clans and sects who wish to make New Orleans into a mecca for voodoo. Okay. Based on the story that they tell earlier in this same chapter, I think this is just them signaling the Hekata are coming. I think that because of the way they describe it, they're trying to say, oh yeah, by the way, this is a good opportunity for you to take back some land that is already strong with the dead from the sects who don't really know what kind of power they're sitting on. And all we clan of the dead are going to begin overlooking our differences in the name of the greater good of necromancy.
So I just want to point this out. Did you pick up that Mike doesn't know what voodoo is? Like,
wait a minute.
I don't know if you're being facetious, Mike, or you're just joking around, but you understand what voodoo is, right?
Yeah. I'm not saying that voodoo is necromancy. I'm saying why I think this part of the book is here. Because I don't see another reason for them to introduce something way over separate, like in another part of lore. I don't have another theory on what the New Orleans section is supposed to be about. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, but that's an angle you can go in. This isn't trying to figure out what they thought. They're not here. If I wanted that, we would just bring them on for interview round 2, right? I don't want that. This is us having fun. But I get that. Right. That's your angle. But I'm like, because like voodoo, like that's a hyper focus on like one aspect of what voodoo could or voodoo has, but isn't all there is what I'm pointing out.
Yeah, and they say it like 4 different ways. It's clear. Like voodoo's the buzzword for New Orleans because they think that's the word that's going to make New Orleans stick in people's minds.
Is it fair? Because like the way I read it is it's twofold. Number one, even weak princes could take up the throne, right? But what I take it as is New Orleans is taking back New Orleans. Doesn't matter who and or what you are. It's literally the culture is taking back its own ground and they're pushing everyone else out. And either you're with it or you're not. And it just happens to be that they're using voodoo as the primary vehicle for the religion that gets them all together, or the spirituality that gets them all together.
Yeah, but voodoo, it doesn't seem like a strange, like, okay, why wouldn't they pick a sect? You know what? Never mind. You said we're not here to talk about what they thought or what they were trying to do. So I would not play the New Orleans described here. I'm not interested.
So what I would say here is that it's a desperate attempt for someone who wrote this to make Voodoo the sole focus, because why not? Like, they're trying to get rid of mages, and they're trying to describe the fact that why was New Orleans so magical, and the only reason they could focus on is the one esoteric thing that it's kind of on the map for. Right? Like I said, I mentioned Marie Laveau already. It's like one of the most common tropes mentioned about New Orleans. One can't do without the other. And there you go. And you say, oh, Bob, voodoo's not necromantic, yet there's a lot in there. It's like, yeah, that's because you have heard of Baron Samedi, and that's it. But there's Papa Legba, there's the Rainbow Serpent. There's a lot to voodoo that's happy and light and good. And there's aspects all around that beautiful religion that takes, parts from all over. But Haiti is where it has its strongest pull from. That's where its strongest pull comes from. Now, why is it here in New Orleans? Well, that's because New Orleans has a history of slavery. Right? We're back to this. So we're going to ignore the horrible thing that was done and thrown in where you could have made here's the thing. They wrote about this, the revolution in Haiti, and I think they did great, where the Semitic are using some of the most evil tactics I've seen written about that I think is great. That they have there is they're warring with the Sedites who tried to bring in this pro-Egyptian enslavement of a populace that they assumed was weak cannon fodder, which is exactly what their slave masters did to them. And the Sedites learned, just like the slave masters before, we outnumber you. We're a sea of slaves who are here, and they were cutting heads off and burning things down. You didn't learn. And now they're here, and you're trying to do the same thing. And the Samedi seem to be that vampire group that is deeply involved from slave blood and didn't forgive, and they don't forget. And their tactics now are, fuck it. You used us and killed us, but I still hear my ancestors. They still walk amongst you. They may not be what you enjoyed looking at, but Baron Samedi has given me free reign to open his door to bring you a message. What's the message? We hunger, right? And here come these zombies that they're willing to use and the dead and the tactics. It's a powerful story. That's a great story for what they have here. And we have a chance here in New Orleans where these people were high on the hog. People coming from France and the Creole that have adopted that land and said it's theirs now. And the appropriated culture that came in. And of course, they're saying that's theirs now. And all sorts of things going on where, it's a tourist trap where people come in and dump money for alcohol and parades and serving the dead and voodoo and voodoo and voodoo. And that's what they have on. But it's in the backdrop of, don't forget the Ku Klux Klan dominated this area for quite some time, left the terror streak that went through here. It wasn't good enough that you had slaves. Afterward, you tormented the people and the descendants, threw them in the bayou. It's great that you have Creole, but let's forget the niggers you threw out in the deep bayou and told to die. That they weren't, and they figured out how to live and thrive. And they made a culture out of it, and their descendants made good with what they had. And they came back from that, and they made a beautiful culture. And New Orleans survived all this. And there are people now who are pro-New Orleans with a great society and social order that they're trying to make work. They still have problems. Slavery is remembered. Racism is remembered. That stuff's still enforced. The N-word is still the bad word that I used once, and I try to limit once per podcast if I use it at all, just to hammer home that exact feeling of, oh my God, I can't believe he said it, and this word should never be used again. But I do it because that potential powder keg of emotional turmoil should be the focus that you have there, because vampires ever remember the grudges they can't let go. Those are the villains you should see populated out here and seated in this area, vying and battling for control. The Tremere should be the faction that have voodoo. That's what I feel. That they're the ones who found a way to corrupt and steal it and have it. And there should be Sedites who saying, we own that. We started that in Haiti. That was our manipulation tool to convince and net followers. And we bring people here, and we're stealing people to ship them to Haiti to fight a war that the Semitic think they're going to win because we need bodies. And this is still going on. And that's a terrible hook and a great one. And at the backdrop of a prince who's agreeing to it because he's an upstart Tremere prince. That's fine because he's the Tremere we're pushing forward. So you come to the city to have beef with him, not realizing there's these evil ass Tremere that are sitting on the side that have voodoo, who've seen it as a form of the black magic version of it. I forget what it's called, but that's the hard followers of it, and they're going to use that any way they can. Right? There's all sorts of factions you can get into when you bring religion into it and separate it and have that battle and that war. Don't make them a bland sect of voodooists. Don't do that to yourself. You are leaving money on the table. You're leaving interest on the table. You're leaving cool. right out of your hands. And they wrote that as a seed, but I think it's still a pop seed, and that's my viewpoint. Now, you may like my viewpoint. You may think that's great. You may say, hey, it's a little too extreme. I think we could use this as fun because I like, I don't know, alcoholic snow cones and just going to New Orleans and being able to shoot a gun and carry a firearm if I have a thing. Whatever your take is, that's fine. But that to me is not World of Darkness. That's not Vampire. That's something where it's your make believe, have fun, right? That's your circus, not mine. And that's my point. But for this game, what we're going to run, do me a favor and look and open your ears now, because the last 10 minutes has to be lightning round of what scenario we're going to focus on. So I'm going to give you a couple. One is the Fortress Atlanta. So basically, they talk about DC is basically we know this. Marcus Vatel's vision. He's here. Everybody's coming in to take a piece of the pie. Stuff's going on. Crazy's happening. But here you guys would be trying to hold down the fort. Right? That's the faction that's going on and dealing with the politics and problems of a swelling canine population because the Sabata are trying to increase number and do whatever to basically crush this territory. And this is at the backdrop of a Polonia who realizes that he doesn't have the support needed to be declared regent. So he fled to Atlanta and declared himself the regent of the true Sabbat.
A faction split.
Atlanta becomes the new Sabbat capital, led by Cardinal Polonia, which to Bob says, I'm happy. Polonia happens to be one of my favorite NPCs they ever made. That's some baller shit right there. That's some 50-cent capital realizing an opportunity and taking it. That's one. Let that resonate with you. I'd say that's probably my favorite one because I think it's cheeky and humorous to see what that would be like. The other one is Asimite integration, which, we'll go. Randy Hopkirk is about to be the first of many, having proven himself both to the Kindred of Birmingham and to Petersoon's War Council. He gains the status needed to sponsor more Asimites who wish to defect to the Camarilla. So we're talking about this is the beginning seeds of the Banu Hakim, right? Or the schismatics coming in from the cult at this point is basically what it is. Mm-hmm. And we're going to put them here, says the Camarilla, to see how they work out. And if they work out doing what we need them to do, then great. However, this is at the backdrop of the Tremere saying, don't do it. Right? That's kind of how it's supposed to be, and everything else that goes in. And so it's basically Jan Petersoon trying to make peace with it, the political backdrop of them being indoctrinated and them having to prove their use in being in the area. And we'll get to that. There's more to it, but I'm having you pick the scenarios that you would play through. Then we have New Orleans, the sunken necropolis. Mike's not wrong. Their intent here was that Lawrence Meek's worst fears come to pass. Prince Calabalarshi falls, not to a Camarilla-led coup or even a Sabbat siege, but to a new vampire sect devoted to voodoo. A city of the dead is what they want to make it, and all that comes with, and more so. Is this the Hecata? I think Mike might be correct. This might be a grand play where they come in. You wanted voodoo? We'll show you voodoo. Right, using that ignorance against them. Maybe old Bob's, he jumped the gun and he didn't see the full picture. I knew this was here. I still stick to my guns. I think there's a better version to tell through this, but I do think this is inspiring to help that idea that even I had. To kind of go through and see what they had in mind and to kind of play through and see what that's all about. This may tell you what would happen, but it doesn't tell you why or the ins and outs or your perspectives coming in. My ultimate favorite one, and it's one that many people blink their eyes at and look away from, the Southern Lords. The tales Bedelia shared with her children are not fanciful Malkavian delusions, but genuine accounts. The earliest kindred to arrive in pre-revolutionary American South were indeed elder vampires accustomed to feeding on large peasant populations in pre-Enlightenment Europe. They saw the rise of American chattel slavery as a way to recreate the large feeding pools to which they were once accustomed. And I'll stop it there because why I like the Southern Lords is because when I think of World of Darkness, when I think of fear, when I think of what a vampire must have saw when they saw slavery, let me tell you what Sejanus saw. Let me just throw that out there. He's from Rome. Rome. They put slavery on the map, Jack. They knew what it was all about, and they knew how to keep him in line. and they knew what was what. And they also knew, what do you mean you stick to only one skin color? Are you kidding me? Everyone you conquer, you fall to your knee and accept your place as a Roman, or you're in shackles to serve us, but you will be of use to us one way or the other. Now, I could either put you in shackles and force you to watch as I take my leave of your wife and your daughters before we have you bury them in the ground because they're not my liking, but I need to relieve stress from dealing with you. Or you can agree to join my army. That's right. You right here can join my army. It's conscripted now. Get to building the road. I'll put a place for your wife and your child, as now that they are proper, soon-to-be Romans from your success rate, we'll take care of them. No problem, because I am a generous tyrant. Right? That mentality. Then they see the great plantation fields and everyone working. Do you think they saw people? Sure did. They saw that what you guys have is a smorgasbord. Open every night, as much as they have, and no one will care if they're gone. And if you do care, I'll just pay you a wage, drop it right there in your little hand, and call it a day. Excuse me, it seems I have been too excessive with your feeding stock. Allow me to compensate you, my friend. Oh, that's all right. We know you, Lord Bob. It's okay. Oh, I certainly appreciate that you understand that. I'll tell you what, I'm going to do one better. Because this happened, how about you and yours come out to my land? How's during the day? Stay for a little bit. I have business to attend to. It'll take me most of the day, but why don't you enjoy the master suite? I'll bring by the girls like you like. Wouldn't that be nice? Why would I do that? Because I'm rich and powerful. Because it's just literally, this is the land of luxury and power luxury for the Southern Lords. But I want you to update it. That's why I like this scenario. Why? Because my name is this ancient vampire such and such that you may have forgot my name. No one else did. There are whole communities out here still putting my name in rights, just like I told them to. Because they know what happens if they didn't. Because Mammy had told them, when raise my children just right, that every night, without fail, you take some form of live sacrifice, you put it up there on that hill, and you go ahead and you tie it to a tree, and you leave it there. And that's not for you, but you leave it there because he will want it. Who's he? He that makes things possible. Who's that? You don't get to ask that. You don't ask Grandmammy who that is. It simply is. Why? Because it's old folkloric. That's what it is. But this scenario says that folklore comes true. And what is that like? You've heard of them coming back and the Sabbat taking over this as a Genesis king and everybody has this. But what happens when you see the originals come walking into town? Their head cocked to the side and want to know, who's this short, diminutive? He looks, are you from here? I am Sejanus, tremble. You're 5'1", sir. I tremble not at you. I am 6 foot in all of Atlanta. Right? Just I am royalty, you peasant. And that's it. And to me, that's like I don't know. That's like Kal-El having to deal with everyone from Krypton coming and going, son, we're about to show you what it means to be a warrior from your home planet. Right? I'm about to whoop that ass sideways. And that's it. Why is it a cool meetup? Because that joke aside, this broadens the horizon where the players, obviously, none of you are Sejanus. None of you are going to be that. It's like you're the people in the factions thinking you have power. Jan Pedersen put you here, or you work for the Sabbat. Pick your side. Pick whichever one you want. There's a new boss in town, and he looks nothing like the old boss, with new ways, new culture, and a new being. What does that look like? What would that be like? And no one ever tells the southern side of things in the world of darkness. You never really get to see that. So that's where my heart goes, because I love the South. And my Southern people, my heart bleeds for you. But at the same time, I got to deal with these Northern swine and what they want to play in the scenario they like. So let's hear it, fellas. Which scenario do we want to put up and what do we want to do?
I'm gonna be even more forthcoming than I usually am. If I play a game where there are Southern Lords, I plan on seeing how many I can eat. And I feel like that might be a distraction. I will defer to DJ's decision on this particular choice.
Well, I hope you brought your bib, because we'll do the Southern Lords.
here's what I'm going to tell you, Mike. I'm going to challenge you, much like myself. Man, we're African. We're heritage. We get it. I also get how bad slavery is and uncomfortable. But the challenge for you is to open your mind and understand. I didn't say that these Southern lords were American.
And I'm not accusing you. I'm just saying.
Here's a hint. What I'm saying is it's a culture you don't know. I didn't say this is like the good old boys and none of that, and this is the Klan founders of the Ku Klux Klan. What I'm saying is that centuries ago, as it says, pre them being here, they brought over their own herd to seed the land that they can feed from and their own way of life, and they ruled the roost. There were Native Americans all around here that were in this area migrating and dealing with these people. What were they like? What were they about? What are they about to be? And you're going to get to understand that. So what I'm telling you is, I feel you. But this isn't about, can Mike dance a jig and shine my shoes as I play a Southern plantation owner? I didn't say that's what it is. What I'm saying is you get to see the horror of an anachronism come manifest in whatever that is. And I didn't say they were torpor the whole time either. What I'm saying is, for whatever reason, in all this turmoil, they're done letting the children play on their land, claiming that they rule it. There comes a time when one must quiet your loudmouth son who's running around talking about how his daddy's so deadly. Don't make me call him. And then daddy comes around going, boy, why is my name in your mouth from one end of the street to the other? And as he quakes in his boots, everybody gets to see what you do to your own son as an example. But why am I laying hands on my son and why am I out here? Because all of you are warring left and right and you forgot who really rules here. It's about respect. That's that effort. But at the same time, I didn't say you didn't work for them. I didn't say that you didn't have an inkling. You just may not know it. As I said, that's the scenario I can build. That's one call for Southern Lords. Mike, you said not your cup of tea. I call that a neutral bid. Brennan stepped out for Valentine's Day. I am married and I had a Valentine's Day and it is 2 a.m. at this time. My wife is in bed with the baby. So I fulfilled my rights and duties as a husband. But what I'm saying here is that just because I want to do one thing that's 2 against 1, not comfortable. Mike, in your honest opinion, if this would be something that would derail you and like would distract you, then what's another scenario that you would pick?
Well, that's the other thing. I agree with you that the two scenarios that are really attractive in this chapter are the Southern Lords and Fortress Atlanta, to me. The difference is I want to play a Sabbat pack in an ongoing campaign if Polonia declares a splinter Sabbat sect. And so I don't think that's appropriate for what we're doing here with BJD. Right? So I will try to be aggressive with my choice of which of the characters presented for the Southern Lord scenario I will be playing and go from there.
I don't think I understand. I heard the Southern Lords, but like you're saying that if you had to play in the new True Sabbat, that's not doing justice to the BJD material?
No. I'm saying that what we're doing with BJD means we're not going to play a campaign in Atlanta.
Oh, now I hear you.
Yeah.
Now I hear you. One is a good showcase of what you could do with the Southern Lords. The other one, and you could do that in a game or two. Yeah. The other one's a full-on campaign you want to play. I agree. I would rather play that campaign than not either. So we're going to do the Southern Lords.
Yeah.
The South shall rise again on 25 years, Vampire the Masquerade, folks. And we'll get that out to you. Thanks, everybody. We're going to end it here because we are way over on time. And sorry, we really enjoyed talking.
We got passionate.
So, yeah. This is what it is. This is what it is. So thanks again, guys. And it's a wonderful thing. And Brennan, I hope it was enjoyable. You should have that time with your lady. And when you see this and you edit it, should have been here. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Hey, folks. This is part 2, technically, because we're supposed to roll right into the actual play. And adding Brennan on, we actually, you didn't see this. We ran about, a little over 3 hours, I'd say, of the actual play of this scenario for the Southern, what we're calling the Southern Lords. It's the angle where Bedelia actually is right about the wars and the blood spilling on the ground is going to bring up some ancients. And we threw a twist into it. And that twist was basically that there are Liban who come to collect the African slave corpses and fetters that are left over here, the specific descendants, to bring them home to the kingdom. and that's part of the Wraith half. If you have Necropolis Atlanta, there's definitely the Ivory Kingdom that would be interested in collecting what was theirs. So we wanted to play that angle because we felt we delivered a head nod to that book, to at least its existence, and that would work. And also, it's more powerful. Now, on top of that, the backdrop is that there are Southern Lords. I told you we would look them up and find them, and to help you out, it's Methuselahs.
Mm-hmm.
It's no joke Methuselahs. The Southern Lords were people who were about to hit that Methuselah status. Now remember, Methuselah isn't just by generation. It's also by pure age. So that 1,000+ year mark is right around the time he'd be considered a Methuselah. And these people, about 150 years back, were up and kicking right at the budding time of more than 150 years, but the budding time of slavery is when they got over here, is when they started seeing all these slaves coming over here, and that's why they came here. When they went to sleep, they made a dynasty. That means they made chilled and then said, hey, you're in charge, and those are the princes. And that's who the princes of the southern states were for the vampiric half. That's over and done. As Brennan was here and we filled this out and we got the roles in, the characters in, we're doing the role play. Well, you guys tell me, what did it start feeling like?
To me, after the first maybe 30, 45 minutes of what we were doing, I kind of started getting that itchy sensation like, oh, this is not going to be a dinner conversation. And we smooth some relationships over and grease some palms and we'll just kind of get this done. You could kind of tell it was going to stretch out. And then once all of the major players were on stage in the same frame together, it was like, oh, this is really going to stretch out. And I think there's also some learning to be done among those of us who are players about some of the nuance between the factions in Birmingham. And it's just, as it went on, you get more and more interested, and it also becomes more and more obvious we don't have time to do everything.
Yeah, because there's a lot of setup with this, adding in live on characters that people are playing, or how to even address them when you're dealing with lupines and Sabbat and someone who is a Malkavian prince, we'll say, right? And then their sire. There is a lot to not just from a role play sense to get down, but from a setting sense to take in and then start processing everything. Right. And in a 1-session game, it kind of slowed down because we could tell people were stopping and thinking okay, so this is happening. 2 + 2 = 5 right now. What is happening?
We're doing arithmetic really quick around here. Some lightning calculus. What about you, DJ?
I felt the same way too. I think when it started to expand, typically when we do these scenes, it's to kind of explore whether or not the scene could be done. And to be honest with you, I think it was probably a gross success in terms of how it was done, but we started recognizing that as the other gentlemen were doing, and just to layer onto it, yes, it does require a lot of time, respect, and we really got into it, but it'd be impossible for us to be able to portray it in one sitting alone, if only because, amazingly enough, it did deserve that much more attention.
And quite frankly, there's some key points that Brennan pointed out that we're about, and that's why you have a good editor, is that somebody in tech support, is that they sit there and say flat out, hey, because Brennan wasn't here at the planning, so he had the benefit of not getting starry-eyed about the scenario pitch that went there. He did edit it, but it's more or less editing is one thing, being there is being there. And then at the last minute, because of my fault, he's like, yeah, I'm going to be there. Turns out I did have an NPC that I didn't have to play, and he was throwing the ass of my sheriff, right? Which is great. But when you have to unpack that character and you're looking at this scenario, you begin seeing that, wow, the audience isn't going to get most of this, because there's a lot of downtime talk to prep everybody for what they're walking into, to then say, okay, game on, where they don't know what's going to happen, and we got to navigate those waters. So I may have planned out the scene, the city, and did all the research for that. I got to tell you, that took longer than a night to get that up and going. And so what we're saying is that this is a great chapter to do a jump-off point to anything, but they give you several scenarios, and all of them are the scenarios players are looking for. And what I mean by that is the South will rise again. That's a chapter, as we went over, right? That's a thing that's there, but they're referring to the Southern Lords, right? They're referring to Bedelia doing this thing where, yes, I told you these things would come back, and they do, and boom, they're these elders. And that's what it is, and then you would see that. And that's the angle we were going with, and that is far more complicated than how they wrote it in the book. That is layers. You got to look them up. You got to lace them out. You got to see what you would do, who would know what. That's a lot. Now, add to the fact that all the other ones involve you being Sabbat, right? You have a sect that's formed that Polonia says, I'm the guy in Atlanta, we're the true Sabbat. And we went over this in the intro already, but I'm just reminding you that complexity, none of this is going to be done quick. This is definitely campaign starters, not campaign fillers. So when you get to this chapter and you get over and you read it and you plan to do it a game for yourself, I promise you a lot of that seeding is done for you, and all you got to do is fill out the detail. You're going to have a solid campaign. Several game sessions to go through and some pretty good insight. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for making the effort, coming out again to record to get it done. And you actually did do a recording, but we're just not going to go with it because we don't want to waste. It's not a waste of time. We don't want to lose our audience that we have that showed up for the intro and know what chapter we're on. And when you read it, I think you get it. But we're saying our hats are off to those of you who can do a one shot and you do an actual play and you get it done in a 3-hour scenario. We don't think it can be done. Not done well. Kind of have a different standard for some people, but thanks. is what we're saying. And we're going to move on to the next chapter because we're trying to get through the big Bible of Beckett's meta plot. So that's we're going to move on. And I want to thank you, Brennan, for doing. I know we flipped you off in jest, but really, brother, I appreciate you here. Sometimes the voice of reason has to be the neutral party who wasn't here, and this time I think it paid off for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to our 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade podcast. If you like what you heard and want to support us, please share it with others or leave a review. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.